I know what you may be thinking, what's this guy doing with targets? It's a fishing channel. Well, yes, I do a lot of fishing. Fishing is my main thing, and it's going to be for a very long time. But the reason I changed my name to Outdoors TV as opposed to fishing is because there's a lot more I want to do in the outdoors. Recently, I've gotten back into shooting air guns a lot, and I've found something out that may help a lot of you. So let's talk about this. What I want to talk about is why guns like this will never be as accurate as pre-charged pneumatic guns or really many other air guns. And what I'm talking about is what some people call springers, or I call them BreakBarrel air rifles because they don't all use springs. This one actually uses compresses a cylinder of nitrogen. These will never be quite as accurate because of one thing, and it's really complicated. So you can do your own research. I'm not going to go into it in this video, but the word is harmonics. They are horrendous with these guns. Now, what goes on when you fire one of these guns, this particular type of gun? Well, there's a big piston that's compressed when you break the barrel down and cock it like that. Sometimes there's a spring, sometimes there's a piston, or sometimes there's a cylinder with gas in it. Either way, there's now a piston pulled back here, and there's pressure here, either spring pressure, spring tension, or gas pressure. In this case, it's gas. But what happens when you release the trigger, when you pull the trigger, it releases that piston. It's a big heavy chunk of something. It jumps forward before the pellet has even begun to be propelled. When that happens, a little jet of air is going to shoot out of this hole and through the barrel, obviously propelling the pellet the rest of the way. Now, what happens when that spring jumps forward is it actually sends vibrations throughout the whole gun and moves the gun. So what does that mean? Well, if you're holding the gun different ways when you take shots, there's a chance that the barrel is moving around enough at the end that your point of impact will shift. So I'm going to try to explain that really quickly, or I'm going to try to demonstrate that really quickly right now. The pellets I'm using today aren't particularly accurate pellets, but they've shot okay out of this gun, and I'm going to use the same ones to keep the consistency up. Shooting from a bipod. Now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this gun, make sure my parallax is right. We're shooting at about 20 yards, not too far. And I'm going to pull the gun into my shoulder really firmly and do the same for all 5 shots that I'm about to fire. So let's get to it. Okay, while I'm doing this, I want to remind you guys, even with air guns, you want to make sure you're always shooting with eye protection. You're always aware of your target, what's behind it, where those bullets go if you're going to miss, or pellets in this case. Just be safe. These things are great fun. They're accurate generally. They're not very loud. And they are little critters' worst nightmares, as well as soda cans. There's 5. Alright. Now we're going to do something a little bit different. This is an extreme measure, but this is to show the differences that you can run into with these guns. Now I'm going to take my time, put a good trigger squeeze on, but I'm not going to shoulder the gun. So I'm going to make sure it's going off on the bullseye, but I'm not going to have my shoulder tight to the gun to absorb that recoil. There's a minor wind coming from directly behind me. At these ranges, it won't affect the flight of the pellet too crazily. This is the distance that we're shooting at. Let's go over and look at the targets. Just turn this guy off. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we're starting to get something going here. I'm going to shoot another 5 shots into each target, doing the same way. This one shouldering tightly, this one not holding these, or not shouldering the gun, and we're going to make a little bit more clear groups, hopefully. Alright, so now I've fired a total of 20 rounds, 10 into each, and I hope you guys can see the trend we've got going here. So, obviously, you can't hold the gun exactly the same tightness every single time. So, with this one, I was shouldering the gun and trying to pull it into my shoulder as tightly as I could, while putting a good trigger squeeze on. And I made sure every time the crosshairs, every time the gun went off, the crosshairs were right on the center. And you're gonna have to trust me on that because I don't have a scope cam. But as you can see, the group is not spectacular, and it is fairly centered a little bit high. But the biggest spread, the spread is pretty big, and it is more or less centered right about here, I'd say, on the bullseye. Okay. When we go to here, where I'm barely touching the gun, I'm just holding it on target and putting a slow squeeze on the trigger, not shouldering it, not doing anything. The group is actually a lot tighter, and there's actually a shift, a point of impact shift, where we're about an inch, maybe a little over an inch to the left of the circle. And this is just holding the gun 2 totally different ways. And my point is, you're usually going to shoulder the gun, obviously. That's how guns are fired. This doesn't apply to all air guns, but specifically BreakBarrel piston-powered air guns. You're going to see a point of impact shift, and you're going to see groups opening up, depending on how tightly you hold the gun. Because the gun is going to move differently when that piston moves forwards. The recoil is going to change slightly where the barrel is pointed just before the pellet leaves the muzzle. Obviously, with higher quality pellets, the groups are going to tighten up a bit. Now, the only reason I'm going to call out this brand particularly is because most people use a lot of these. 7.9 grain hollow point, and this is in 177 caliber. If you guys didn't notice, they're the small pellets. They're not going very fast. They're going probably, I'd say, around 900 feet per second. But these are pretty okay quality for what you pay. They're not great. If you were to get higher quality pellets, this group would probably tighten up to be about 1/4 of an inch, maybe, at best. Not much better than that. And we are at 20 yards, remember. But with that being said, this still illustrates my point, I hope. And so these guns are great. You got to keep in mind, this is still accurate enough, in my opinion, to put a headshot on a groundhog at 20 yards or in, and absolutely accurate enough to shoot squirrels at like 10 yards and in, and is perfectly accurate enough to plink cans all you want in your backyard. Totally fine, and that's what I do with this a lot. I do a lot of plinking, I do a lot of close range, like bird and squirrel hunting, and if I try to hunt a bigger animal, I make sure I'm very close, and I make sure I aim for the right spot. But if you want to get into air guns for hunting, if you haven't purchased one already, or if you want to know why your gun is shooting weird and it's a break barrel piston gun like this may be one reason why. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you found it informative, leave a like and a comment. I really appreciate it. Also, if you have not subscribed to my channel already, please subscribe. This is a bit of a deviation from my usual types of videos, but I'm hoping to branch out a little bit, show a little bit more of what I like to do, and if you guys like it, make sure to let me know. So thank you, I appreciate the view, and I will see you next time.